What is going on, Twintendo Nation? Hope you're having an awesome day, and in today's Super Mystery Dungeon video I'm going to be teaching you guys all about Emeras and looplets. Basically, there are 31 Emeras, and these are all the little stones you find in dungeons. They can only be used in dungeons, and once they're in your bag or your looplet, they'll disappear once you leave a dungeon. Now, one of these Emeras is actually a Mega Stone equivalent, I guess. It's called the Awakening Emera. That allows your Pokemon to Mega Evolve if it, actually can Mega Evolve in other games. So, for example, you have a Charizard. You're gonna Mega Evolve into one of them. I think with Charizard, by the way, since it's it's got 2 Mega Evolutions, apparently they kind of rotate every dungeon. So if you get Mega Charizard X in one dungeon, the next time you find an Awakening Stone or Awakening Emera, you'll change into Mega Charizard Y. I think that's how it works, but I'll let you guys know more details if I find any more out. But I'm going to list basically the 31 Emeras in the game and what the effects are when put into looplets, because if you use them without looplets, they'll boost some of your stats, but they don't have a big effect. So we're going to start off in we're going to do this in alphabetical order. So starting off with the Awakening Emera, like I said, it's a Mega Stone of the game, temporarily puts Pokemon into Awakening mode. If the Pokemon can Mega Evolve, it Mega Evolves. So basically what that means is, I think any Pokemon can get this Emera, on its looplet, but only certain Pokemon can Mega Evolve. I'm not sure if the other Pokemon that can't Mega Evolve have the same kind of, stat boosts and can destroy walls like Mega Evolutions, and, Mega Evolutions are just like appearance changes. For example, there's going to be a lot of Pokemon that people are going to pick that can't Mega Evolve, and it would be really unfair if some starter Pokemon have an advantage. So hopefully that isn't the case, but we'll have to see when I play the game. Next up is Berry Power. Now this is a nice red Emera, and it may prevent stats being lowered by attacks. So, for example, I guess some moves like Mud Slap and stuff can lower your accuracy. If you have this looplet on, the chances of that happening are decreased. Next Emera on the list is the Blowback Emera, and this may warp opponents away when hit by attacks. So if they hit you, they might sometimes randomly just warp away to the other side of the dungeon, which can be helpful if you're in a pinch. So that sounds like a really good one, unless you're doing alright and it's kind of a pain and it does like 1 damage on you because you're really high level, warps away and you got to find it again. So I don't know, it depends. If for early times in the dungeons, that'll be pretty decent when you're low level. Next up is the Bonus Up Emera, and this increases the chances of a move having a special effect. So this will be like maybe your stat being lowered, chance of burn, stuff like that for your moves, so that's a very good one to have. Next up, speaking of burns, Burn Charm prevents the Pokemon from being burnt, very helpful if you go into a fire dungeon, so definitely keep that in mind, try and pick one of those up if you can. Next up is Charm Up Emera, and this reduces damage received from attacks, a very good one by the sounds of it. Not sure if that means special attacks or is it just, like physical attacks, but it just sounds like it's all round, it just prevents, not prevents so much, but decreases damage taken, which is really good. Next up is Clairvoyance, and if this Pokemon has this Emera in the looplet, and it's the leader Pokemon, so for example, the Pokemon you're playing as, if you have the Clairvoyance Emera in your looplet, it allows you to see the location of all the items on the map, so it's kind of like the X-ray specs. I hope they're still in the game. Hopefully this hasn't replaced them, but by the sounds of it, it might have, because it's just made them redundant really, but it's probably very difficult to find this Emera in the dungeon, but it sounds like a really good one to have. Next up is probably maybe the best Emera to have. This is called Companion Revival, and if the Pokemon that has this Emera attached to it and it's the leader, so for example the Pokemon you're playing as again, if you have the Companion Revival Emera in your looplet, other members of the squad are automatically revived when they faint without using a Reviver Seed. So I'm not sure if this lasts throughout the whole dungeon, I'm not sure if it has a one-time use like a Reviver Seed. It's very, very interesting, sounds incredibly overpowered, so they might be incredibly rare, but very good and definitely helpful, so try and pick those up if you can. And it's a green one, so look out for the green Emeras, they seem to be the best ones. Next up is Condition Prevention, and this may prevent special conditions affecting, or afflicting the Pokemon. So for example, special conditions would be like, stats changes and, being burnt and paralyzed, stuff like that. It looks like that. And it could be like, for example, maybe if you're versing a Yam Mask or something like that and it changes your ability to mummy, something like that, it seems it would prevent stuff like that from happening. So it's really helpful by the sounds of it, and again, definitely one you should look out for. Next up is Confusion Charm, prevents the Pokemon from being confused. There's not really too much to say about that. Confusion was definitely a really big pain in Mystery Dungeon games, so hopefully, I wouldn't say no to that, but I could do without it. So yeah, but being confused in the game is a right pain, especially when you can't attack and you're just getting destroyed. So yeah, next up is the Good Coordination Emera, and this increases accuracy in alliance attacks. Now if you don't know what the alliance attacks are, basically these are the new team attacks in the game. You all jump in onto a Pokemon and you all do certain attacks. You pick your attacks basically, and then you jump in and do the attack. And these attacks nullify any like type advantages or, you know, type resistances, so they'll all do damage. There's no like super effectiveness and there's no like resistance. It will just do its damage, which is really, really good, to be honest. And it does a lot of damage, team attacks or the alliance, so it's definitely worth doing. So that is really good, especially if you have a move that misses a lot, or like it's a really low accuracy move but you want to use it in the alliance because it does a lot of damage. Definitely have this Emera attached. Next up is the Intimidation Ameri, and this may cause your opponent's moves to fail, which is very helpful, especially if you're being crowded out by certain Pokemon. So maybe in a monster house that would be a very helpful one to have. Next up is the Last Stand Emera, and if the Pokemon is to be knocked out by an attack, it may survive with 1 HP, and this Emera is then used up afterwards. So once, you know, you've taken that hit and you're on 1 HP, the Emera just disappears. And we've actually seen this in the trailer, I think, when Pikachu's attacked by Salamence, and it goes flying back, hits the wall, and it just survives on 1 HP even though it took more damage than it had health. So that's very interesting, and I think that's a very, very good Emera to have. So definitely keep that one. It's like a Reviver Seed, but better because you wouldn't even use one up. But anyway, next up we're moving on to the Long Ears Emera, and if the Pokemon that has the looplet attached is the leader again, it allows you to see the location of all wild Pokemon on the map. So that's very, very helpful. Again, that's kind of like the X-ray specs again, but just not as helpful. It's kind of like similar to that other Emera, the Clairvoyance one, when you can see items on the map basically. But if you have this one and that one attached, so the Clairvoyance and you have the Long Ears Emera attached to your looplet, you've basically got the X-ray specs again. So that's a very good one to have. Definitely attach the Long Ears and the Clairvoyance Emera together, because you'll basically be sweeping all the dungeons. So if you can get those two again, that'd be really helpful. But you know, it's all about finding these Emeras. Next up is the Missing Traps Emera. This prevents effects of traps on this Pokemon, which is very helpful because traps are incredibly annoying, especially later on in the game when they're just literally everywhere. And I can imagine they're going to be very difficult, some dungeons later on in the game where traps are just, you know, everywhere in the dungeon. So getting this Emera will be very helpful. Next up is the More Momentum Emera, and this may damage the next Pokemon if the move defeats the opponent and still has distance. So for example, you use Water Gun, or you know, a move like that in front of a Pokemon, and if it defeats the Pokemon, it will keep on going and hit one behind it. It's very helpful. So for example, Bullet Seed was really good at that, except obviously once you hit a Pokemon, you'd use your next one. But if you had Bullet Seed and then the momentum would keep going, you'd have 5 shots across the whole dungeon. It'd be crazy. So definitely helpful if you have a Pokemon that can learn like Bullet Seed, Razor Leaf, stuff like that. Very, very good. Next up is the Move Barrage Emera, and this may cause your attacks to hit again in the same turn. So that's very interesting. So for example, we know there's, like certain types of moves that will hit again, like Double Slap, Fury Swipes, again Bullet Seed, but this one, it seems like any move can hit twice, which is very, very good, to be honest. So for example, we use a really powerful move like Surf or something, and then it hits again and that Pokemon's out of the way. That'd be really helpful. Something like that is definitely worth having on your looplet. Next up is a Perilous Charm Emera. This prevents the Pokemon from being paralyzed. Again, just not much to say about this, it's just a simple Emera to have. Next up is a Poison Charm one. Again, you know what this is, basically just prevents your Pokemon from being poisoned. That's a very helpful one to have, because I think being poisoned in Misty Dungeon it's so incredibly frustrating, because you can't revive health by walking around, and it's sapping you basically constantly. Your health's going down constantly, so it's very hard to recover health, and if you can't find the stairs, it's an absolute nightmare. So that's one definitely that I'll probably have on, because I just hate being poisoned. But next up we have the Power Up X Emera, and as you can imagine there's going to be a Power Up Y Emera. But so the Power Up X Emera increases the Pokemon's attack, and if you pair it up with the Power Up Y Emera on the same looplet, attack is increased further. So if you have the Power Up Y Emera attached, basically your attack stat is not only doubled or increased, it's increased again. So it's very helpful to pair these two up. Power Up Y Emera, by the way, that actually increases the Pokemon's accuracy, and if paired up with the Power Up X Emera on the same looplet, accuracy is increased further. So if you basically have those two combined, it's incredibly helpful. So next up is the Pre-Emptive Hit Emera, and this increases the chance of getting a critical hit. Critical hits weren't too helpful for me in Mystery Dungeon personally. You guys might have had some great experiences with them, but can't really remember getting too many critical hits. But I'm not going to say no to more damage, let's be honest. So definitely one to have, I guess. If you got room, might as well put it on. Next up is the PP Up Chimera, and this increases the PP when you move to a new floor. So every time you go up a floor, your PP of your move will go up. So if you have any max elixirs on you, you're going to basically have so much PP on the final floor. For example, you find this Emera on the first floor and it's like a 99 floor dungeon, your moves will never run out. So if you have a really good move that you just spam a lot, that's going to do really, really well. So definitely, that sounds like an amazing one, to be honest. I'm actually reading these for the first time, by the way, so they sound pretty damn good, especially that one. I'll definitely look out for that one. All the green ones look the best. Anyway, next up is the Pommel Charma Emera. Let's see what this one does. So the Pommel Charma Emera is basically when the Pokemon is attacked multiple times in a turn, the damage is decreased gradually. So for example, Fury Swipes hits you 5 times. Let's say it does 15 damage first time, it would do maybe like 13 damage next time and then 11, and it will basically go down instead of consistent damage. It's pretty helpful, but I can't see that being too much use. Next up is the Remote Dodge Emera, and if the opponent is attacking from a distance, the Pokemon is more likely to dodge the move. So for example, they attack you across the dungeon with, I don't know, for example like Ice Beam or whatever can go across. I think there's some moves, and I'm not sure if like Powder Snow or Blizzard, those type of moves that kind of take out the whole dungeon would work on this, but I guess I don't see why not. If the Pokemon's not next to you, then that will be very helpful, because some of those moves are absolutely insane. They can just hit a wide range and they're very deadly. Like the Articuno boss from Blue and Red Rescue Team, it can use like Powder Snow, and oh my god, it was so unfair because you couldn't really dodge it and it could hit you from anywhere. So yeah, that would be very helpful to have that Emera on. Next up is the Sleep Charm Emera. This prevents the Pokemon from being asleep. Again, not too much to say on that. Next up is actually another Sleep Emera, and this is called the Sleep Behind Emera, and this may put opponents to sleep when they hit you with attacks. So that's pretty helpful. Say if you get swarmed by Pokemon in a monster house or just in general, they hit you, they fall asleep, and obviously that's a Pokemon out the way for now that you can focus your efforts on another Pokemon that's attacking you. So that's really helpful, that one, I think. Next up is the Spin Order Emera, and this may confuse your opponents when they are hit by attacks. So again, if they hit you with an attack, they'll get confused, and that could help you because obviously they can still attack you if they're confused, but I think that's very helpful. So that's one to have as well. Just basically get any of these Emeras that affect your opponents. I think I definitely attach get one looplet dedicated to these kind of Emeras, because you can actually have multiple looplets if you didn't know. You can store as many as you want and have different Emeras attached to them. That's going to be one I'm definitely going to have, like a looplet just built up of these kind of Emeras that affect your opponent. Anyway, next up is the State Transfer Emera. Basically, I'm looking at this now, and Cerebi have just copied and pasted the same description as the Spin Order Emera. So I'm not sure what it actually does, but I'm guessing if it's a state transfer, say if you're paralyzed, it would transfer that to the opponent. I'm guessing it's something like that. It would pass your status on to the Pokemon that's attacking you. That's all I can say because they've got the description wrong here. So yeah. But anyway, moving on, we're going on to our last two Emeras, and this one is called This Time Emera. That's a weird one. I'm not sure if that's just the translation, but that'll probably get changed. But if a move misses, the chances of it missing next turn are decreased. So say if you use like, I don't know, Sheer Cold, which is like got very, very low accuracy, that misses. But you have this Emera attached to your looplet, it's got, more chance of hitting next turn. So it's kind of helpful to have this one, especially with moves that have really low accuracy. So yeah, that's not too bad. But anyway, the last Emera to talk about is the Type Bulldoze Emera, and this increases damage inflicted on Pokemon that resist the type of the used moves. So for example, if I use a water type move on a grass Pokemon, you guys know that it would resist that water type move, the grass Pokemon. However, if I have this Emera attached to my looplet, this would actually get rid of the resistance in a way. I'm sure it would say it's not very effective, but it increases the damage, so basically that resistance is gone. So a very helpful one to have, especially if you're in a dungeon that's not suited to your Pokemon. So guys, that is all the Emeras. That's 31 of them, and yeah, that took me a while to get through them all, but they're very, very interesting and definitely worth picking up if you're going on an adventure with your Pokemon. Definitely have lots of looplets in your bag, because you can actually, like I said, attach multiple Emeras to different looplets and have different effects. It's very, very helpful. Some looplets have like 7 slots, or maybe more actually, and some looplets have only like 3, so I think you're going to get the better looplets towards the end of the game, and probably the better Emeras towards the end of the game. But that's all I can say, guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, definitely hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed already, definitely do so. That'll be on screen now or down below. Just feel free to click either if you want to join the Twintendo Nation. And on the and on screen now, guys, you can see our 2 previous videos. On the left hand side is a giveaway video. We're giving away a copy of Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon. All you have to do is click that video to find out how to enter. And on the right hand side, guys, you can see another Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon video about returning characters. Very, very interesting. Definitely check that out if you're hyped for that video. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed today's Super Mystery Dungeon video. I'm going to try and upload daily again. It's been pretty difficult with university, but I'm going to try and, you know, work as hard as I can. And yeah, hopefully you guys will appreciate the work. So hope you have an awesome day, guys, and I will see you in tomorrow's video. Peace!